My name is David Martinez, and at 36, I've learned that life doesn't hand you grand moments. It gives you quiet ones, the kind you only recognize when you look back. I live in a small, worn-down apartment on the edge of Seattle, Washington, just a 20-minute bus ride from the buzzing heart of the city. The building's old, the kind where the stairs creak and the paint peels and curls, but it's home, mine and Tommy's. My son is 8, all skinny limbs and big brown eyes that see more than most kids his age. He's got his mom's smile, the one thing I cling to when the nights get heavy. 4 years ago, my wife Elena lost her fight with cancer. I still remember the hospital room, the beep of machines, the way her hand felt too light in mine. After she was gone, I quit the fire department, couldn't stand the thought of running into burning buildings when I'd failed to save the one person who mattered most. Now, I work 2 jobs to keep the lights on and Tommy's sneakers from falling apart. By day, I'm a cashier at Miller's Corner Store, a little convenience shop in a working-class neighborhood where everybody knows your name and your business. By night, I clean offices downtown, scrubbing floors while the city sleeps. It's not glamorous, but it pays for Tommy's school supplies and the rent that's always due. It was a Friday afternoon in early fall, the kind where the air's crisp but the sun still warms your skin. I was at Miller's, wiping down the counter with a rag that smelled faintly of bleach. The store's small, cramped with shelves of chips, sodas, and off-brand cereal. There's a coffee machine in the corner that hisses too loud and a lottery ticket display that's been half empty since last month. Mr. Miller, the owner, was in the back muttering about inventory. He's a good guy, pushing 70, with a belly that strains his flannel shirts and a habit of worrying about everything. "David," he'd say, "you work too hard." I'd just shrug. Hard work's all I've got. Tommy was sitting on a stool near the register, his sketchbook open on the counter. He's always drawing. Superheroes, dragons, sometimes me in a cape I'd never wear. Today, it was a picture of our apartment, complete with the leaky faucet and the crooked picture frame above the couch. "Look, Dad," he said, holding it up. His voice was soft, careful, like he was afraid of breaking the moment. I leaned over, ruffling his dark hair. "That's us, huh? You even got the crack in the wall." He grinned, proud, and went back to shading the couch with a blue crayon. The store was quiet, just the hum of the freezer and the occasional chime when a customer walked in, regulars mostly, guys from the auto shop next door, moms grabbing milk, teenagers sneaking energy drinks. I liked the rhythm of it. Scan, bag, smile, move on. It kept my mind from wandering to places it didn't need to go, like Elena's laugh, or the way she'd sing off key while cooking, or the hospital bills I was still paying off, one paycheck at a time. I glanced at the clock above the door, 4:47 p.m. My shift started an hour ago, but I'd been here since noon, covering for a guy who called in sick. Tommy didn't mind. He liked hanging out at the store. Said it felt like an adventure. I was thinking about grabbing him a carton of milk before we headed home. The fridge was near empty, and I'd promised him pancakes tomorrow. "Hey, bud," I said, tossing the rag under the counter. "We'll get that milk soon, all right? Then it's you, me, and some cartoons." He nodded, not looking up from his drawing. Outside, the street was calm. Maple trees lined the sidewalk, their leaves just starting to turn gold. Miller's Corner Store sat on a corner lot with a flickering neon sign that read "Open" in red. Across the street was a pawn shop and a laundromat where the dryers never worked right. It wasn't the safest neighborhood. Break-ins happened, and Mr. Miller kept a baseball bat behind the counter, but it was ours. People looked out for each other. Mrs. Carter from downstairs always slipped Tommy an extra cookie when she baked. Old Man Jenkins waved every morning when I walked Tommy to the bus stop. I was restocking the cigarette packs behind the counter when the door chimed. I didn't look up right away, probably just another regular. But Tommy's pencil stopped moving, and I felt the air shift, like the room got heavier. I turned, and that's when I saw her, a little girl, maybe 6, standing in the middle of the aisle. She was clutching a stuffed bear, its fur matted and one eye missing. Her blonde hair was in uneven pigtails, and her eyes were wide, frozen, like she'd just realized she was lost. She wasn't crying, but her lips trembled. I'd never seen her before. "Hey, sweetheart," I said, keeping my voice low, stepping out from behind the counter. "You okay? Where's your mom?" She didn't answer, just hugged the bear tighter. Tommy slid off his stool, standing close to me, his sketchbook forgotten. I scanned the store. Only a couple of customers, an older guy browsing magazines and a woman picking out bread. No one who looked like they belonged to her. I was about to ask Mr. Miller to check the back when the door chimed again, louder this time. My stomach dropped before my brain caught up. A man stormed in, hoodie pulled low, cap shading his face. He moved fast, too fast. And then I saw it, the gun in his hand, black and gleaming under the fluorescent lights. My training kicked in, muscle memory from years of running toward danger. But this wasn't a fire. This was worse. "Everybody down!" he shouted, voice raw, waving the gun like he meant it. "Now!" The woman with the bread screamed, dropping her basket. The older guy froze, hands up. Mr. Miller stumbled out from the back, eyes wide. Tommy grabbed my arm, his small fingers digging in. I pushed him behind me, my body shielding his. "Stay low, bud," I whispered, heart pounding so hard I could barely hear myself. The little girl was still standing there, right in the open, her bear dangling from one arm. I wanted to move, to grab her, to do something, but the guy was already at the counter, slamming his hand down. "Money, all of it! Open the register!" Mr. Miller fumbled with the keys, his hands shaking. I kept my eyes on the girl. She hadn't moved, hadn't made a sound. The gunman's gaze flicked to her, and his face twisted, angry, desperate, unhinged. I didn't think. I just knew. 2 steps, maybe 3, and I was there, throwing myself in front of her as the gun swung her way. "Run!" I yelled, pushing her down, my arms around her tiny frame. The blast was deafening, a crack that tore through the air. Pain exploded in my shoulder, hot and sharp, like someone had driven a spike through me. I hit the floor, blood soaking my shirt. The girl beneath me. Her bear was pinned under my arm, and I could feel her shaking, hear her shallow breaths. "It's okay," I managed, my voice weak, blood pooling under me. "You're okay." I looked into her eyes, blue, scared, but alive. Tommy was screaming somewhere behind me, "Dad! Dad!" The gunman was still shouting, but it sounded far away, like I was underwater. I kept my body over the girl, holding her close, willing her to stay still, to stay safe. That's all I remember before everything went black. Just her face and Tommy's voice and the weight of a choice I didn't have time to make. I wasn't trying to be a hero. I was just a dad, doing what dads do. The world came back in fragments. The smell of gunpowder, the squeak of sneakers on linoleum, Tommy's voice cracking through the haze. My shoulder was on fire, a pulsing heat that radiated down my arm and up my neck. I was on the floor, the little girl still tucked beneath me, her stuffed bear crushed between us. Blood soaked my shirt, warm and sticky, pooling under my cheek. I tried to move, but my body wouldn't listen. The girl's breathing was fast, shallow, but steady. She was alive. That was enough. "Dad!" Tommy's cry cut through the chaos, closer now. I forced my eyes open. He was crouched behind the counter, his face pale, eyes wide with terror. Mr. Miller was on his knees, hands trembling as he shoved bills into a plastic bag. The gunman loomed over him, hoodie sweat-soaked, the pistol shaking in his grip. His eyes were wild, darting between the register and the door. "Faster, old man!" he barked, slamming the counter with his free hand. The sound made the girl flinch beneath me. I tightened my arm around her, ignoring the white-hot pain in my shoulder. "It's okay," I whispered, my voice rough, barely audible. "Just stay down." I didn't know her name, didn't know why she was here, or where her parents were. All I knew was the gun was too close, and she was too small. My training from the firehouse flickered in my mind. Stay calm, assess, protect. But this wasn't a fire. This was a man with a loaded gun and a kid in the crosshairs. I scanned the store. The woman with the bread was curled up by the freezer, sobbing quietly. The older guy was flat on the floor, hands over his head. No one else was moving. The gunman's gaze snapped back to us, his eyes narrowed, locking on the girl. My stomach lurched. "You!" he snarled, stepping closer, the gun swinging toward her. "Get up! Now!" "No!" I said, the word scraping out before I could stop it. I shifted, trying to cover her more, my good arm pinning her to the floor. Pain shot through me, but I held firm. "Leave her alone!" He laughed, a sharp, ugly sound. "Big man, huh? Move, or I shoot you both." The barrel was inches from my face now, the metal glinting under the fluorescent lights. I could smell the oil on it, the sweat on him. My heart pounded, but my mind was clear. I'd faced worse. Flames, collapsing beams, the scream of sirens. This was different, but the instinct was the same. Protect. "Tommy!" I called, keeping my voice steady. "Stay where you are, bud! Don't move!" I didn't look at him. I couldn't. If I did, I'd break. The girl whimpered, her small hands clutching my sleeve. Her bear's one eye stared up at me, lifeless but accusing. I had to get her out of this. The gunman's finger twitched on the trigger. "Last chance," he said, voice low, dangerous. "Move." I didn't. I couldn't. Not with her under me, not with Tommy watching. I thought of Elena, her face in that hospital bed, the way she'd made me promise to keep Tommy safe. I thought of the pancakes I'd promised him tomorrow. I thought of this little girl, whoever she was, who didn't deserve to be here. And then I moved. Not away, but up. I lunged, shoving the girl behind a display of candy bars, my body a shield. The gun went off. The blast was deafening, a second bullet tearing into my side, just below the ribs. I gasped. The air knocked out of me, but I kept moving, pushing her further back, my hands slipping in my own blood. "Run!" I yelled, voice breaking. "Go!" She scrambled, crawling behind the shelves, her bear dragging behind her. The gunman cursed, swinging the gun toward me again. I was on my knees now, vision blurring, blood dripping onto the floor. "You stupid," he started, but he didn't finish. The door chimed, loud and sharp, and everything stopped. "Police! Drop the weapon!" Blue lights flashed through the windows, red and white strobing across the store. 2 officers burst in, guns drawn, voices booming. The gunman spun, panic in his eyes, and fired wildly. Shelves exploded, bags of chips raining down. I ducked, covering my head, my body screaming with every movement. The girl was out of sight now, safe, or as safe as she could be. Tommy was still behind the counter, silent now, his sketchbook on the floor. "Drop it, now!" one officer shouted. The gunman hesitated, then bolted for the back door, shoving Mr. Miller aside. The officers gave chase, their boots pounding. I collapsed, my strength gone, blood soaking the tiles. My side was worse than my shoulder, a deep, burning ache that made it hard to breathe. I crawled toward the counter, needing to see Tommy. "Bud," I rasped, reaching out. He was there, peeking over the edge, tears streaking his face. "You okay?" He nodded, choking on a sob. "Dad, you're bleeding. You're bleeding a lot." "I know," I said, trying to smile. "I'm okay. Just stay there." I wasn't okay. The pain was swallowing me, my vision tunneling. I could hear sirens outside, closer now, and voices shouting. Customers, neighbors, chaos. The girl's bear lay a few feet away, abandoned. I hoped she was hidden, safe. Mr. Miller was on the phone, his voice shaking as he talked to 911. "Yeah, he's shot. David, my employee. He saved a kid. You gotta hurry." I wanted to tell him to check on the girl, to make sure she was okay, but my throat was too dry, my words slipping away. I lay there, blood pooling under me, Tommy's hand gripping mine through the counter's gap. "Don't close your eyes, Dad," he whispered, his voice fierce despite the tears. "Please!" I wanted to answer, to promise I'd stay, but the darkness was pulling. The last thing I saw was Tommy's face, and the last thing I felt was the weight of a choice I'd make again in a heartbeat. I wasn't a hero. I was just a dad, trying to keep a kid safe. And for now, that had to be enough. The sirens were a distant wail when I slipped under, but they roared back as I fought my way to the surface. Pain anchored me, my shoulder a throbbing knot, my side a furnace. I was on a stretcher, fluorescent lights streaking overhead, paramedics shouting numbers I couldn't follow. Tommy's face flashed in my mind, his small hand clutching mine, and I forced my eyes open. The ambulance doors slammed shut, and we were moving. "Stay with us, David," a woman said, her voice calm but urgent. She pressed gauze to my side, the pressure sending a fresh wave of fire through me. I tried to speak, to ask about Tommy, about the girl, but my throat was raw, words stuck. "Kid's fine," she said, reading my eyes. "Your boy's with the cops. Little girl's safe." Relief hit harder than the pain, and I let my head fall back, the ceiling spinning. The hospital was a blur, gurneys, beeping machines, the sharp smell of antiseptic. They wheeled me into surgery, Dr. Hassan's face appearing above me, masked and steady. "You're lucky, Mr. Martinez," he said. "Bullet missed the artery. We'll get you fixed." I wanted to nod, to ask about Tommy again, but the anesthesia pulled me under like a tide. I woke in a recovery room, the world soft around the edges. My shoulder was bandaged, my side stitched and sore, an IV dripping into my arm. The clock on the wall read 8:12 p.m. Hours gone. My first thought was Tommy. I tried to sit up, but a nurse gently pushed me back. "Easy," she said. "Your son's in the waiting room. He's okay." I exhaled, the weight in my chest easing just a fraction. The door opened and Tommy ran in, his sneakers squeaking on the linoleum. His eyes were red, but he was whole, clutching his sketchbook like a shield. "Dad," he choked out, climbing onto the bed, careful not to jostle me. I wrapped my good arm around him, pulling him close. His hair smelled like the store, coffee and candy, and I held him until his breathing slowed. "You scared me," he mumbled into my chest. "I know, bud," I said, voice rough. "I'm sorry. I'm here now." He nodded, then pulled back, holding up his sketchbook. "I drew this for you." It was me, in a hospital bed, with a cape tied around my neck. I laughed, the sound hurting my side, but I didn't care. Mr. Miller shuffled in next, his flannel rumpled, eyes glassy. "David, you crazy son of a—" He stopped, glancing at Tommy, then shook his head. "You saved that little girl. Police got the guy. You're all over the news." I grimaced. I didn't want news. I wanted to go home, to make Tommy those pancakes. "Just doing what needed doing," I said. He patted my arm, awkward but kind, and left with a promise to check on the store. The hospital buzzed outside my room, nurses, carts, muffled voices. I was drifting in and out when the door opened again. I expected another nurse, but it was a woman, tall and striking, her dark hair pulled back in a messy bun. She wore a tailored coat, heels that clicked on the floor, but her face was raw. Eyes red, makeup smudged. She looked like she'd run straight from somewhere important. In her arms was the little girl from the store, clutching that same matted bear, her pigtails loose now. The woman's gaze locked on me, and something shifted in her expression. Relief, guilt, something deeper. She set the girl down, who immediately hid behind her legs. "Emma," the woman said softly, kneeling to her level. "Go say thank you." The girl, Emma, peeked out, her blue eyes wide but braver now. She took a step, then another, and stopped at my bedside. "Thank you, mister," she whispered, holding out a crumpled drawing. It was a stick figure me, with a big red heart and a bandaged arm. I took it, my throat tight. "You're welcome, sweetheart," I said. She smiled, small but real, then ran back to her mom. The woman stood, smoothing her coat, but her hands trembled. "I'm Victoria Blackwood," she said, voice low, controlled, but cracking at the edges. "Emma's my daughter." She paused, looking at the bandages, the IV, the drawing in my hand. "You saved her life." I shook my head, wincing at the movement. "Anyone would have—" "No," she cut in, sharp but not unkind. "They wouldn't. I was in a meeting when she wandered off. I didn't even know she was gone until—" Her voice broke, and she looked away, swallowing hard. "I got the call and drove straight here. I saw you on the floor, bleeding, holding her. I've never—" She trailed off, pressing her lips together. I didn't know what to say. I'd never seen her before today, but her face was familiar now, haunted, like she carried her own kind of pain. "She's okay," I said. "That's what matters." Victoria nodded, then glanced at Tommy, who was watching her quietly. "This is my son, Tommy," I said. She smiled at him, a small, genuine thing. "Hi, Tommy. Your dad's a hero." Tommy blushed, shaking his head, but I saw the pride in his eyes. Emma tugged at Victoria's coat, whispering something. Victoria knelt again, listening, then looked at me. "She wants to know if you like bears." I chuckled, the pain flaring but worth it. "Love 'em," I said. Emma's face lit up, and she hugged her bear tighter. Victoria stood, her eyes lingering on me. "What's your name?" she asked, softer now. "David Martinez," I said. Just a guy who works at Miller's. She repeated it like she was committing it to memory. David, she said, I don't know how to thank you. Anything you need, anything, tell me. I shook my head. Keep her safe, that's enough. She opened her mouth like she wanted to argue, but stopped. Instead, she reached into her coat and pulled out a business card, placing it on the bedside table. If you change your mind, she said. Then she took Emma's hand and they left, the girl waving shyly over her shoulder. Tommy climbed back onto the bed, curling up beside me. She's fancy, he said. Yeah, I said, staring at the card. Victoria Blackwood, CEO, some tech company I'd never heard of. I didn't touch it. I didn't need anything from her. I had Tommy and I was alive. For now, that was enough, but as the room quieted, the beeping of the monitor steady in the background, I couldn't shake her eyes, grateful, broken, searching, or the way Emma's drawing felt heavier in my hand than it should. Something had shifted, and I didn't know what it meant yet. The days after the shooting blurred into a haze of hospital routines, nurses checking vitals, Dr. Hassan's calm updates, the sting of needles, and Tommy's quiet presence at my bedside. My shoulder was a dull ache under the bandages, my side worse, stitched tight and throbbing when I moved. I hated the bed, the thin mattress, the way the gown left me exposed. All I wanted was to go home, to our cramped apartment with its creaky floors and Tommy's drawings on the fridge. But the doctors kept me longer, muttering about infection risks and blood loss. The news wouldn't let go. Local hero saves child in armed robbery, screamed the headlines. Miller's corner store was swarmed with reporters, their cameras flashing through the windows. Mr. Miller, bless him, put up a sign, closed until further notice. He visited once, bringing a bag of Tommy's favorite sour candies and a newspaper clipping taped to the store's counter. A blurry photo of me on the floor, Emma's bare just visible. People want to know you, David, he said, scratching his head. You're famous, I groaned, sinking into the pillows. Fame was the last thing I needed. I turned down every interview. A local station offered money, enough to cover a year's rent. I said no. The city wanted to give me a key, some ceremony with handshakes and plaques. I told them to give it to the cops who nabbed the guy. I wasn't a hero. I was a dad who reacted. End of story. The only thing I asked Dr. Hassan was, when can I work again? He raised an eyebrow, scribbling on his chart. Give it a month, David. Your body's been through hell. Tommy stayed with Ms. Carter from downstairs, the one with the cookies. He came every afternoon, sketchbook in hand, drawing me as a firefighter again, even though I'd left that life behind. You're still saving people, Dad, he said one day, showing me a picture of me carrying Emma out of flames that weren't there. I ruffled his hair, my throat tight. Just keeping you safe, bud. I was dozing off, the pain meds pulling me under, when the door opened quietly. I figured it was a nurse, but the click of heels on linoleum was different, sharp, deliberate. I opened my eyes and there she was, Victoria Blackwood. No coat this time, just a navy blouse and slacks, her hair loose around her shoulders. She looked less like the frantic mother from the store and more like someone who belonged on a magazine cover, but her eyes were tired, shadowed. In her hands was a small gift bag. Simple, no ribbons. Mr. Martinez, she said, voice soft but clear. I hope I'm not intruding. David's fine, I said, sitting up as much as I could without wincing. And you're not. She hesitated, then stepped closer, setting the bag on the bedside table. Emma peeked out from behind her, clutching that same bear, now cleaned up, its missing eye stitched with a black button. Hi, Emma said, waving shyly. Tommy, perched on the chair beside me, waved back, grinning. Victoria's gaze flicked to Tommy, then to the drawings taped to the wall. His superheroes, our apartment, me with a cape. Something softened in her face. Your son's talented, she said. He gets it from his mom, I said, the words slipping out before I could stop them. I didn't talk about Elena much. It still hurt, like a bruise that never healed. Victoria nodded, understanding more than I'd said. She pulled the chair closer and sat, her hands folded in her lap. Emma climbed onto the bed's edge, careful not to bump my IV. We brought you something, she said, pointing to the bag. I opened it, pulling out a children's book, The Brave Little Bear, with a worn cover, like it had been read 100 times. Emma had drawn a picture on the title page, me, her, and her bear, all holding hands. "For you," she said, proud, "so you remember." I swallowed hard, turning the page to hide my face. "Thank you, Emma. It's perfect." Victoria watched us, her expression unreadable. Then she leaned forward, voice low. "The police told me everything. How you didn't hesitate. How you shielded her with your body." She paused, her fingers tightening. "I don't know how to repay that." "You don't," I said, setting the book down. "She's safe. That's enough." She shook her head, not arguing, but not agreeing either. "You're not what I expected," she said, almost to herself. I raised an eyebrow, and she caught herself, a faint smile breaking through. "I mean, the news, they make you sound like some larger-than-life figure, but you're just a guy with bills," I finished, half joking. She laughed, a small, surprised sound, and for a moment, the room felt lighter. Tommy was showing Emma his sketchbook now, pointing out his dragon with a missing wing. I watched them, my chest warm despite the pain. Victoria followed my gaze, her smile fading into something sadder. "She doesn't have siblings," she said quietly, "or many friends. I work too much." I didn't know what to say to that. My life was Tommy, the store, the rent. Hers was something else. I'd seen her business card, CEO of some medical tech company. A world of suits and boardrooms, nothing like my mop water and midnight shifts. But here she was, sitting on a plastic chair talking like we weren't strangers. "How long since you lost your wife?" she asked, the question so direct it caught me off guard. I glanced at Tommy, but he was distracted, explaining crayons to Emma. 4 years, I said, voice low. "Cancer. She was everything." I stopped, not wanting to spill more. But Victoria's eyes held mine, steady, like she understood loss in her own way. "I'm sorry," she said, and meant it. Not the empty kind of sorry people give, but the kind that carries weight. We sat in silence for a moment, the kids' chatter filling the gap. Then she stood, smoothing her blouse. "I won't take more of your time," she said. "But I meant what I said. Anything you need, call." She nodded at the card still on the table, untouched. I didn't promise I would. She didn't push. Emma hugged me gently, her bear pressed against my arm, and they left, her heels echoing down the hall. Tommy climbed back beside me, flipping through his sketchbook. "She's nice," he said. "And Emma's cool." "Yeah," I said, staring at the door. I didn't touch the card, but I didn't throw it away either. Something about Victoria's question, about Elena, about time, stuck with me. Like she'd seen a piece of me I kept buried. I didn't know why it mattered. But it did. The hospital let me go after 10 days, stitches itching under the bandages, a bottle of painkillers in my pocket I barely touched. Tommy was waiting at the apartment, his backpack slung over one shoulder, Mrs. Carter waving from the hallway with a casserole. Home smelled like lemon cleaner and Tommy's crayons. I dropped my duffel, hugged him tight, and promised no more heroics. He just nodded, like he'd believe it when he saw it. Miller's reopened a week later, the bullet holes patched with fresh paint, a new "Hero Works Here" sign Mr. Miller insisted on hanging above the register. I told him to take it down. He didn't. Customers stared. Some clapped me on the back, others slipped 20s into the tip jar for the kid. I gave the money to Mr. Miller. He needed it more. My first shift back was slow, my shoulders stiff, but the rhythm felt right. Scan, bag, smile, move on. Victoria didn't vanish like I expected. A manila envelope showed up at the store 3 days after I got home. Inside, a full scholarship letter for Tommy to St. Augustine's, the private school across town with the fancy uniforms and the science lab. A note in neat handwriting, "He deserves the best. No strings." I stared at it for an hour, then folded it into my pocket. I wasn't ready to say yes, but I wasn't ready to say no either. She kept showing up, quiet, deliberate. First it was a landscaping job at her company's campus. Groundskeeper, daylight hours, double my store pay. "You like plants," she said over the phone, like it was obvious. And you'd be close to Tommy's new school. I took it because the math worked and because I was tired of midnight mopping. The campus was a different planet. Glass buildings, manicured lawns, employees in sneakers and hoodies worth more than my rent. I wore the same work boots, same faded flannel. Victoria never pointed it out. She'd nod from her office window when I trimmed the hedges, then disappear. No fuss. The kids were the bridge. Tommy started at St. Augustine's in September, Emma already there in first grade. They found each other on the playground like magnets. Recess turned into playdates into Saturday afternoons at the campus garden where I taught them both how to plant sunflowers. Emma called me Mr. David at first, then just David, then one day, Dad, when she scraped her knee and I carried her to the nurse. The word hung in the air. Tommy didn't blink. He just handed her a Band-Aid and said, "Told you he fixes everything." Victoria watched from a distance, coffee in hand, sunglasses hiding whatever she was thinking. I kept waiting for the catch, the moment she'd remind me who paid the bills, who belonged where. It never came. One October evening I was locking the garden shed when she appeared, coat over her arm, hair down for once. The sun was low, painting everything gold. Tommy and Emma were chasing each other through the rows of marigolds, laughing like the world was simple. "You're good with them," she said, stopping beside me. "They're easy to love," I replied. She nodded, eyes on Emma. I used to think love was a luxury I couldn't afford. Board meetings, quarterly reports, red-eye flights. I missed her first steps. Her first word was meeting. Her voice cracked on the last word barely. I didn't know what to say. My world was spilled milk and bedtime stories. Hers was whatever happened in those glass towers. "Kids don't keep score," I said. "They just want you there now." She looked at me then, really looked. "You make it sound simple." "It is, and it isn't." Silence, stretched, comfortable but heavy. Emma ran up, cheeks flushed, holding a dandelion. "For you?" she said, shoving it at Victoria. "So you stop being sad?" Victoria took it, eyes shining, and tucked it behind her ear like it was diamonds. Later, when the kids were buckled into her SUV, Tommy had a sleepover at a friend's, she lingered by my truck. "David," she said, "I know you think we're from different planets. Maybe we are. But Emma hasn't had a nightmare since you started coming around. And Tommy, he smiles like he used to in those drawings." I leaned against the door, arms crossed. "I'm not charity." "I know," she said quickly. I'm not offering it. I'm offering proximity. The guest house behind the mansion. It's empty. 2 bedrooms, its own kitchen. You'd still work the garden, still pay rent if you want, but the kids would be together, and you wouldn't have to choose between bills and bedtime." I stared at the ground, the cracked asphalt of the parking lot. The offer was insane. $1 million property for a guy who counted quarters for laundry. But I saw Tommy's face in the backseat window, waving, and Emma blowing kisses. I saw Elena's smile in my memory telling me to let people in. "I'll think about it," I said. She nodded, no pressure. "Take your time." That night, Tommy asked if we could have pancakes with chocolate chips. I said yes, even though we were out of syrup. He didn't care. He just wanted the ritual, me flipping, him counting. When he was asleep, I sat on the couch, Victoria's business card in one hand, the dandelion Emma gave me in the other. 2 worlds, colliding whether I wanted it or not. I didn't sleep much. The pain in my side was dull now, but the ache in my chest was new. I kept hearing Emma call me Dad, kept seeing Victoria's eyes when she said she'd missed her daughter's first steps. I wasn't ready to cross the line she'd drawn in the sand, but I was tired of pretending the line didn't matter. The next morning I called the garden office and asked for Victoria. When she answered, I said, "Guest house, 1-month trial, rent deducted from my paycheck, no favors." A pause, then a soft laugh. "Deal." I hung up before I could change my mind. Tommy bounded in, asking if we were moving to a castle. I told him it was just a bigger backyard. He didn't care. He just wanted to know if Emma could come over after school. I looked out the window at the gray Seattle sky, the rain starting to fall. 2 worlds, maybe. But kids don't see borders. And maybe, just maybe, neither should I. The call came at 2:14 a.m. the kind of hour that only brings bad news. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, Victoria's name lighting the screen. I was out of bed before the second ring, heart already racing. "David," she said, voice tight. "Emma's burning up. 103. I'm at the ER. Can you—" She didn't finish. She didn't need to. I threw on jeans and a hoodie, woke Tommy with a gentle shake. "Buddy, Emma's sick. We gotta go." He was up in seconds, no questions, pulling on his sneakers. Mrs. Carter met us at the door, half asleep but waving us off. The drive to Seattle General was a blur. Red lights, wet pavement, wipers slapping rhythm. Tommy sat silent in the passenger seat, clutching his sketchbook like a talisman. We burst through the ER doors, the antiseptic smell hitting like a wall. Victoria was in the waiting area, coat forgotten, hair in a messy knot. Her eyes were red, but she wasn't crying. She was holding it together the way only someone used to crisis can. Emma was on a gurney down the hall, IV in her tiny arm, cheeks flushed, bare tucked under her chin. A nurse blocked the door, but Victoria's voice cut through. "He's family!" I didn't argue. I went straight to Emma, brushing damp hair from her forehead. "Hey, kiddo," I whispered. "I'm here." Her eyes fluttered open, glassy but recognizing. "David," she croaked, voice small. Tommy stood beside me, offering his sketchbook. "I drew you a dragon," he said. She managed a weak smile. The fever was viral. "Doctor," Hassan said later. "Nothing exotic, just a nasty bug that hit kids hard. Fluids, rest, monitor. But the first night was brutal. Emma spiked to 104, thrashing, calling for daddy in her delirium. Victoria froze at the word, her face crumpling. I didn't. I climbed onto the bed, careful of the IV, and pulled Emma against my good side. "Shh, I've got you," I murmured, rocking her the way I used to rock Tommy through nightmares. I sang the only lullaby I knew, Elena's favorite, off-key and soft. Tommy curled up in the chair, sketching quietly, his pencil the only sound. Victoria stood in the doorway, arms wrapped around herself, watching. I caught her eye once, nodded toward the empty spot on the bed. She hesitated, then sat, her hand resting on Emma's leg. We stayed like that until dawn, a triangle of tired adults and feverish kid, the monitors beeping steady. By morning, the fever broke. Emma slept, color returning to her cheeks. Victoria hadn't moved, her head tipped against the bed rail. I slipped out to get coffee, Tommy trailing. In the hallway, I leaned against the wall, exhaustion hitting hard. Victoria joined us, 3 paper cups in hand. "You didn't have to stay," she said, offering one. "Wasn't leaving," I replied. She nodded like that was the only answer that made sense. We drank in silence, the kids' room visible through the glass. Emma stirred, reaching for her bear. Tommy went in first, climbing up to show her his dragon. Victoria watched them, then turned to me. "The guest house," she said, voice low. "It's yours, both of you, not a trial, not rent, just come." I started to protest, pride, habit, the weight of worlds, but she cut me off. "I'm not offering charity, I'm offering proximity. Emma needs you, Tommy needs her, and She stopped, swallowing. "I need to learn how to be a mother before it's too late. You're the only person who's ever shown me what that looks like." I looked at the kids, Tommy reading to Emma, her head on his shoulder. I thought of our apartment, the leaky faucet, the stack of bills. I thought of Elena, how she'd want Tommy to have more than survival. "One condition," I said. "I pay what I can, and I keep the garden job." "Done," she said, no hesitation. We moved in 3 days later. The guest house was behind the mansion, tucked among cedars. 2 bedrooms, a kitchen with actual counter space, a porch overlooking a koi pond. Tommy's eyes went wide at the backyard. "It's like a park," he yelled, already planning forts. I carried the last box, Elena's old photo albums, and set it on the shelf. Victoria met us at the door, Emma on her hip, both in matching pajamas. "Welcome home," she said, and meant it. The first night I tucked the kids in together, Tommy in the bunk bed, Emma in the trundle. They whispered until they passed out, bear and sketchbook between them. Victoria lingered in the hallway, arms crossed. "I don't know how to do this," she admitted. "Neither do I," I said. We'll figure it out. She smiled, small but real. Together? Together. I didn't sleep much. The house was too quiet, the bed too big. But when I checked on the kids at 3 a.m., Emma had rolled into Tommy's bunk, his arm around her. I stood there a long time, the weight of bullets and boardrooms fading. This wasn't charity. This was choice. And for the first time in years, I wasn't choosing alone. A year slips by the way quiet mornings do, one sunrise bleeding into the next until the calendar surprises you. The guest house is no longer a trial run. It's home. Tommy's bunk bed has a permanent dent from Emma's nightly migrations, and the porch swing creaks under the weight of 4 bodies instead of 2. I still rise before dawn, but now it's to brew coffee in a kitchen that doesn't leak, to pack 2 lunches instead of 1. The garden job stuck. I manage the therapy plots where kids on the spectrum plant tomatoes and forget their worries for an hour. Victoria sold half her company shares, traded boardrooms for a nonprofit that funds single parents and orphaned kids. She kept the mansion, but the guest house is ours. Deed in both our names, no rent, no favors, just a quiet agreement sealed over pancakes. Tommy and Emma are inseparable. They wear the same school crest now, ride the same bus, argue over whose turn it is to feed the koi. Tommy's grown an inch, his voice cracking on the edges. Emma's pigtails are gone, replaced by a bob she cuts herself with craft scissors. They call the mansion the big house, and the guest house ours. Boundaries blurred somewhere between shared dinners and movie nights, between Victoria reading bedtime stories in her old CEO voice and me teaching them both how to change a bike tire. I never went back to midnight cleaning. The store kept the hero sign. Mr. Miller framed the newspaper clipping and hung it by the coffee machine. I visit once a month, bring the kids for candy and stories. He still calls me crazy. I still tell him to take the sign down. He never does. Victoria's office is a sunlit room off the nonprofit's warehouse, walls covered in kids' thank you drawings. She wears jeans now, hair in a loose braid, the power suits donated to a women's shelter. She laughs easier, sleeps deeper, cries at commercials about lost dogs. Some nights she stands at the guest house window watching fireflies with Emma on her hip, and I catch her whispering apologies to the dark, to the year she missed. We don't have a wedding photo. No rings, no vows in front of a crowd. There's just a quiet Thursday in July when Tommy asks the question that changes everything. We're at the kitchen table, syrup sticky on our fingers, the radio playing old Springsteen low. Emma's coloring a dragon with 6 wings, Tommy's sketching the koi pond from memory. Victoria's flipping pancakes, humming off-key. Tommy looks up, mouthful, and says, "Dad, can I call Miss Victoria Mom now? For real?" The room stills. The spatula freezes midair. Victoria's eyes meet mine over the griddle, wide, shining, terrified. I set my fork down, wipe my hands on a napkin that used to be Elena's. The kids wait, breaths held. I think of Elena's laugh in this same kitchen, of bullets and boardrooms, of a little girl's bear and a boy's sketchbook. I think of choices made in seconds and choices made in silence. I think of the word family and how it never needed blood to be true. I nod, slow, sure. "Yeah, bud, you can." Victoria's spatula clatters into the sink. She turns, tears already falling, and Tommy's out of his chair, arms around her waist. Emma follows, confused but happy, wrapping around both of them. I stay seated a second longer, letting the moment settle, then join the pile. 4 bodies, 1 heartbeat. Later, when the kids are asleep in the same room, Tommy on the top bunk, Emma below, bear and sketchbook between them. Victoria and I sit on the porch swing. The night's warm, crickets loud, the koi pond glowing under string lights we hung last spring. She leans her head on my good shoulder, the one that still aches when it rains. "We didn't plan this," she says, voice soft. "Nope," I answer. "But we stayed." She laces her fingers through mine. "Think Elena's okay with it?" I smile into the dark. She'd want Tommy happy. And pancakes on Saturdays. Victoria laughs, the sound light, free. "Think we're doing all right?" I squeeze her hand. "We're doing better than all right." We don't say "I love you" out loud. Not yet. We say it in the way I fix the leaky faucet without being asked, in the way she leaves my favorite mug on the counter every morning. We say it when Tommy calls her mom without hesitation, when Emma falls asleep on my chest during movie nights. We say it in the quiet choice to wake up here every day and still be here when the sun sets. Family isn't a beginning written in blood. It's a story written in mornings, in staying, in choosing the people who choose you back. And ours? It started with a bullet I never meant to take, a little girl I didn't know, and a promise I never broke. I kept that promise, and somehow it kept us all, us.